It does seem to be something rotten going on in the state of Milan, and particularly on the interstate of Milan. Tell me this, when is a crisis on social media a real crisis, and when is it just a beef between a player or two?
This is where I don't want to just steal Andy's point that the social media crisis partly fueled by the fact that the player at the centre of it, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, did release his social media statement in 3 different languages, so did come ready for a proper social media statement. This was not a casual drop of, oh, I'm angry right now and I'm typing what's coming out of my immediate sense of anger. But yes, for those who've missed it, after Inter went out of the Club World Cup rather flatly against Fluminense, Lautaro Martinez gave these comments where he said, essentially, if people don't want to be here, get out of here. We only want people who want to be here, who want to be here.
And who's he talking about, we wonder?
Yes, who could he possibly be talking about? Could it be Hakan Çalhanoğlu? Well, Beppe Marotta basically just said as much in another interview, which the club president not especially keeping things subtle. And then Hakan Çalhanoğlu put out this Instagram message, as I just said, in 3 different languages, responding, which then Marcus Thuram liked to make it the perfect football soap opera for the modern era. Because now we have to talk about who likes social media posts as well. I mean, look, I'm rolling my eyes at it and also acknowledging that this is the reality. This is how people do communicate in 2025, and it is absolutely how players brand themselves and how players make their moves in terms of pressuring clubs and doing what their agents want them to do for getting moves. How big of an issue is it? I'd say it's a fairly significant indication that all is not happy in a camp that ended the season catastrophically. A team that should have won at least something this season and wound up winning absolutely nothing and then getting thumped 5-0 in the Champions League final. I think it's certainly indicative of something that's, I think, was already an open secret, which is that Hakan Çalhanoğlu is interested in leaving and is interested specifically in moving to Galatasaray. And I think that how big of a problem that's going to be for the club is the bit that remains to be seen, and especially with the new manager, Christian Kivu, only taking charge of his first games at the Club World Cup. There's a lot of question about what this is going to lead to for the rest of the summer and what this squad's going to look like by the time they come back together for the new season.
I mean, I kind of get where Lautaro is coming from, because he's like, well, I have to speak up as the captain. And his loyalty to Inter is something that I really love about him, actually, that he's so implicated. But I just wonder, you talked about the end of the season, Nicky, and the way it's kind of unravelled. I mean, something you said to me before we came in here about it's felt like the Club World Cup has been an extension of the back end of the season. I totally agree with that, because you know, there are so many things with a little attention to detail. They could have ended up with at least a double. And I'm not saying they could have gone and won the Champions League, but they might have given it a better go in the final. But they've seemed so exhausted in body and mind. And you've seen that, I think, in the way that like they've let some of those games that they had in their grasp go. And that has come into this Club World Cup. I mean, I saw their first game against Monterrey when I was out in LA. And I felt it wasn't really that different from this game against Fluminense or so many others, in that they did so much right in the game, I feel. And they had enough about them and they created enough opportunities to win the game, I think. But just that little lack of freshness in body and mind, I think, totally influenced it. That sort of lack of clarity. And it's something we keep seeing from Inter. Now, Marotta's talked for ages and ages about making the team, making the squad younger. And clearly that's to do with wages, resale, all that sort of stuff as well. But I do feel that the squad is ready for a refresh as well. Now, that's complicated. And I think it's, you know, Marotta is obviously someone who knows what he's doing in the transfer market. But I think it's a lot for Kivu to have to deal with. And I think the other thing is, It does feel, though, that it's inevitable, and it's felt inevitable for a while. I talked a couple of months ago about them maybe coming to the end of a cycle and this being their one crack, this group of players, their last crack to win a Champions League together. But I just feel that this sort of snappiness, I said this on the Ramble yesterday, it feels like just a tired old guy's being a bit grumpy.
Yeah.
Doesn't it, really?
I think that's part of what is happening in this situation is that whole group is exhausted. I mean, they played almost literally as long a season as they could play. The only game they didn't play that was possible for them to play was the Coppa Italia final because they lost the two-legged semi-final to Milan. Other than that, they played every game of every competition they could have played. I suppose they could have played one more round in the Champions League if they'd gone to the playoffs. They went the quicker way because they finished in the top 7 of the first stage. But they played an extraordinarily long season. Everyone has talked about how the heat has been a factor at this summer tournament as well. They are exhausted. And I think that for someone who gets a lot of criticism, actually, and I think is sometimes unfairly accused of being this big game bottler because of some specific games and some of those which he was carrying an injury, I think Lautaro Martinez, this season of all seasons, you cannot accuse him of not putting the effort in. You think about that coming back against Barcelona when he'd injured himself in the first leg and playing on 6 days rest with what was obviously a bad hamstring and still scoring and winning a penalty. I mean, he put in everything he had this season. So if he's got a bit of frustration in him at seeing this teammate who is now not with them on the tour and is looking for a move, or is with them on the tour but not playing, and I can understand where some of that tension comes from. And I think in some ways there probably should be some people at Inter going, you know what, we need that bit of it, and the loyalty and the willingness to push through.
Yeah, the tension we might understand, Nicky, and sorry to interrupt you there, the tension we might understand, but the expression of the tension on social media is a different thing. And you know, if I might just quote Çalhanoğlu's wife, because she's involved in this as well.
Cheers.
And she says, Sinem, she wrote on social media, look, some people are not loyal to you. They are loyal to their need for you. Once their needs change, so does their loyalty. Don't regret having a good heart, Hakan. All good things come back and multiply. Very philosophical. And I wonder where the sliding doors moment that led to a public spat between the captain and one of the players was, whether it was them being, defeated in the Club World Cup by Fluminense, whether it was that beating they suffered in the Champions League final, or whether it was even when Simone Inzaghi announced, look, I'm off to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Listen, what she says there, I quite agree with her. I think that in the real world, there are businesses, and you need to remember when you're an employee of a business that a business will have loyalty to you very often as long as you're helpful to a business. That's the reality of the work world. Now, football clubs, of course, are also clubs, and there will be individuals, those clubs, who have genuine loyalty to people. There are people involved. There's always people, and that's the other part of life, right? Those are two things that you have to balance. So I think there is always humanity within that, but I think that it's not unreasonable for a footballer to keep in their mind at all times that a football club, there's always a limit. Even Francesco Totti at Roma, at the end, there was this great conversation of where should the football club's loyalty extend forever, and when does someone have to turn around and say, you're too old, we need you to step aside. That's the reality of the business. Now, if in terms of a specific sliding door moment for Çalhanoğlu at Inter, I don't know if I have one for him individually, because I think that's clearly a conversation that's been going on with him and in his life and in his private life, perhaps about wanting to go back to Turkey. He's been the national team captain. He has made some quite, I think, powerful choices as well in terms of being a national figurehead and stepping up and being at the front of fundraising and things like after the earthquake. So he's put himself in positions of showing that he cares about his country. And I think that I can understand perhaps him wanting to spend this last part of his career there as well. I'm sure there's more to it than that. But in terms of specific break with Inter, I think probably there's a lot of the emotion of the end of this season that is in everyone right now. I think that will go for Lautaro, that will go for Çalhanoğlu.
And there's no time to process it.
Yeah,
because it's just not finished.
Yeah,
that's the thing, and they've got to get themselves up for this thing that they really don't feel like getting up for at all. But I guess the more practical problem with Çalhanoğlu and Inter is the fact is that they can't give him away. Mm-hmm. He remains. He might want to go, but I think he's got to respect the fact that he's contracted and he's still a valuable player for them. And even if he has looked weary at the end of this season, just as Mkhitaryan has, just as so many of the rest of them have, I think by his own definition, he's like one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world in that position. I say one of the best, he says the best, obviously. But I think them going out and finding a way of replacing him, it's not easy. It's really difficult.
No, so the number that's been bounced around in the Italian media is them originally wanting 40 million, but they'd maybe go to 30 million euros. Whether Galatasaray can put that on the table is a question.
That still feels to me like they would be doing him a favour.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, for the level of quality that he has. And actually, when we talk about rejuvenating the squad, yes, he's not young, but he's definitely not the oldest in that group either. So there's players who are closer to the end than him in terms of their footballing careers. Ederson is, I think, the dream target they would like to bring in from Atalanta. Whether that's realistic, again, well, it cost you more than you're getting.
Maybe cost twice that much, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So he would be very hard to replace. The club does need to rejuvenate. They were the oldest team in Serie A this season and played the most games. They need to rejuvenate. But the question that I think is the big one this summer is, and by the way, they have already started doing that. They've signed Bonni from Parma, who's a really nice player, I think. Possibly not quite what I think they still need, which is someone else who's just clinical and ruthless, because there's been a lot of pressure on Thuram and Martinez to keep scoring those goals up front, but definitely something valuable to add to the attack. But the question is this tear it all up now and I suppose rip the plaster off and do it in one go? Or is it, we can make Çalhanoğlu the one big sale this summer and do a bit of work and then next summer we do more? That's the question I think that Inter are facing up to right now.